And Murado, I want to thank you for taking time out of your personal lives to come here and share your thoughts and to hear from our elections division on our plans for the general election. You know, the theme of my administration has been open and accessible government, and it's events like this where we create an opportunity for you to directly interact with county government, that's what this is all about, to get your questions answered, to make sure that your opinions have a place to land. And I will highlight that when you walked in, there was a little document. It has a survey to fill out. We've had over 1,500 responses from the community, which is great. So please, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, please feel free to share this with your communities so that we can have a full scope of how we can better serve you. So thank you all for your attention, and thank you to our team for being here.
Thank you, County Executive, and we're also joined by Councilwoman Hallam. Thank you. We have two members of our board here. Thank you again for everyone for attending tonight. This is a first for the Elections Division. We've never, just had kind of a public informational meeting in this setting before, so we're a little nervous, a little excited, but we wanted to be transparent as a follow-up to the May Board of Elections meeting that we had. At that time, we had kind of done a recap of the ballot return sites that we had, and we had indicated to the county executive and the board that we were going to look at data from prior elections and prior ballot return site that we had in April, and really look at who's requesting mail-in ballots, who's turning them in, and more importantly, who's not turning them in. And we have some hypotheses on why we're not getting ballots turned back in, but we wanted to comb through all of that data. That way we could make responsible decisions leading into the November election. So tonight we're going to present some of that information at a very high level, share with you some of the maps that we've looked at that show population densities, kind of remind you of what we did in the spring, and then we're going to open it up for questions related to off-site voting options. We want to hear from you. Everyone should have grabbed an agenda when they walked in. On that agenda, there's a QR code on the bottom that will take you to the survey. Abby just told us tonight we've had over 1,500 people take the survey, which is awesome. But if you haven't taken it yet, we encourage you to do so. As the county executive said, share it with friends, family, neighbors. We want to get as much feedback as we can so that we can make these informed decisions that really serve everyone. We're a small team making big decisions. We want that input. So please share it with everybody. They have until September 3rd to take it. Okay, I'm going to introduce everyone really quickly first. My name's Jessica Garfolo. I'm the Director of Administrative Services for Allegheny County.
I'm Jim Davis. I'm Deputy Director for Administrative Services. Great to see everybody tonight.
I'm Chet Harthutt. I'm the Deputy Division Manager for Elections.
Excuse me, I'm David Boy. I'm the Elections Division Manager.
Al Upsitnik, Assistant Solicitor.
Lisa Michelle, also Assistant Solicitor.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. So again, just as you can see on the agenda, we're going to go through the information, and then at the end, we're going to open it up to questions that are kind of on topic related to these off-site locations. So as a reminder, in April of this year, we reintroduced ballot return sites. The last time we had done something similar was back in 2020, where we had satellite locations throughout the county. And we took a regional approach in 2020, and we did something very similar in April of this year. When County Executive Ann Murado was elected and took office, she implemented the All-In Allegheny survey. And early on, a lot of survey results came back, particularly in the vibrant democracy that we were involved in, and they indicated people wanted other options to turn in their mail-in ballots. A few different options were given, but it was very resounding that people wanted something other than just putting their ballot in the mail. So in January, we got to work on laying out a plan where we could offer ballot return sites to the public. And we started brainstorming amongst ourselves on how we could set these up so that they were kind of accessible all over the county. And it's evidenced on the map that we took a regional approach to those. Now, we started doing in-person events later in February and in March, and most of us that are sitting up here participated in those in-person events. And at the time, a lot of the feedback we got wasn't necessarily the hours that anyone wanted or the days or even the locations. People were just excited that it was happening. You know, it hadn't happened since 2020. They were elated that it was on the table and it was being offered. So we stuck with this plan and rolled it out. We had it for 2 weekends prior leading up to elections. It wasn't widely used, but I don't blame that on the accessibility as much as it wasn't a hotly contested election. I think a lot of people saw this as an election that was already decided in the primary for the candidates that were running. So we had just shy of 2,800 people utilize this to drop their ballots off. I still think that was a great number, and that worked for us. This was kind of a soft rollout. It got us back in the groove because we hadn't done it in 4 years. And we were able to effectively roll out a program that some people did utilize. Obviously, some locations were busier than others. The Squirrel Hill location, we saw outstanding numbers there. People were very appreciative, partially because of location, but also because of some religious holidays that Election Day was up against in the community that it served. But as you can see from the statistics, you know, our parks were very popular as well. But again, when we did this regional approach, we were looking at what's accessible, what is close to public transportation, what is, you know, geographically placed, so Northeast, Southwest City can all get to these spots. And we did weekend hours thinking most people have weekends available. We had county staff that worked these. We had security there sitting outside of the location. We also had security cameras to monitor the whole process that fed back to our warehouse so that we could make sure the process was secure. Excuse me, I'm battling a little bit of a cold here. So with those numbers, you know, we had over 121,000 people request a mail-in ballot. And the map indicates kind of our population clusters of who requested and where. And we've looked at data from 2022 and 2023 as well. It mimics the map that you're seeing from 2024. Those clusters and the population density that you see is very similar to what we've seen in years prior. You know, we have some of the outskirts of the county where not quite as heavily used, and that's okay. Of the 121,000 that did request ballots, though, in this last election, we had over 95,000, almost 96,000 people return, which is amazing. We always hover around about an 80% return rate. This election was a little bit lower at 78%, but we saw data from the rest of the state, and we were one of the higher, correct?
Yeah, we were in the top 10. You know, proud to say that our counterparts out east were about 10% lower than us, so that's always good. So.
Yeah, thank you. So again, we're always hovering around that, you know, 80% return rate, which is amazing. But we needed to figure out what can we do for that other 20% that's not returning their ballots. Is it, you know, location factors, hours, days? And when we looked at the data of the people that didn't return, again, it's the same over the last 2.5 years. We saw the same trends in 2022. We saw the same trends in 2023. We saw it again in the spring of 2024. We still have these hot pockets of people that are just not turning them in. And we're trying to figure out why. You know, it covers all ages, demographics, socioeconomic factors. It's really spread out. So this is the data that our staff took, the people that aren't returning their mail-in ballots. And we started to look at, you know, is it because they're not in proximity to a location? Is it because, you know, public transportation isn't available? What is it? And started laying out, well, maybe, you know, we needed to adjust our locations. So this is what we've spent, you know, the last month or so looking at. And we're also going to gather data from the survey that was put out and feedback that we received tonight to determine what our best plan moving forward is. So some of the factors that we consider are the hours. In the spring, we did weekend hours only. We did 9 to 5 one day and 11 to 7 one day. And some of the feedback that we got from people that were actually utilizing the ballot return sites were that they wanted hours before work. Some people wanted hours after work. Some people were perfectly fine with the hours that we had. Other people, it was the dates. They didn't like weekends. They were more hopeful that we would have weekday hours available because their weekends are consumed with fun stuff, or they work on the weekends. Not everybody works Monday through Friday. So, these are things we're trying to gain feedback on. One of the obvious was locations. Which regions and neighborhoods could benefit from it? Do we have any, population clusters where, let's say, out of 500 people that requested a mail-in ballot, 300 didn't turn them in? Those are things we need to look at. One of the other factors that we look at, and primarily Chet, Jim, and Michelle, who's sitting up there, are looking at accessibility of sites. A lot of places are very willing to offer their locations to us, and we're very appreciative, but not everything's accessible to people. We have to make sure that it's ADA accessible. We have to make sure that there's parking either on-site or very close by. We also want to make sure that it is close to public transportation so that people that don't drive can get there. Those are, just some of the things they're looking at when they're going out and trying to find locations to host these. And then finally, our office has to be mindful of our budgetary restrictions. We are fiscal stewards. We have a budget that was set last year for this year. So we have to work within the constraints of that to make sure that we're doing what is fiscally responsible for our office and within our means as well. So I know, some people want these everywhere. We don't have the budget for that. We have a finite budget that we're working within. We have staff that we can assign, but we also have a set number of trained staff that we will assign to these. So these are just some of the factors that we're taking into consideration when we're planning ahead to November. So at this point, I know that was very high-level overview, but I want to open it up to questions, first from either of the board members, if you have any, related to return sites or off-site locations.
I just have one about, I noticed like the two different maps, the one of where most of the uses were and the requests were, and then I saw the map of like the scatter plot of all the different ballots that weren't returned. And so I'm wondering if, like, for example, the ones that are near the current drop boxes, have you done any analysis of, are people just requesting more mail-in ballots in these areas, or is it actually a higher rate of not returning them than the other areas?
So the return rate's relatively the same.
Everywhere?
It's just population is what it really turned out to be.
All right,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I was wondering. Thank you very much.
Other questions?
Thanks. I had a quick question. How do you market this? Do you have a rollout plan for letting people know about this? Because not everybody maybe is.
I'm glad you brought that up. That was one of the things that we've discussed with our marketing group. Also, Abby Gardner, our communications director. We have a budget, a pretty big budget actually, that we use for poll worker recruitment. And we're doing very well in that area right now. So we're talking internally about diverting some of those funds to help market this even more. We do a lot on social media. We do a lot of back of the bus ads, bus stop ads. If you drive out 28, we utilize the billboards out there as well. So we do have the ability to divert some of our marketing funds away from certain aspects of elections and really roll it out towards promoting satellite offices or off-site voting.
Questions?
Yes, of the not-returned, how many were surrendered at the polls? How many people decided to go and vote instead of mailing it in? What percentage would that be? Do you have anything, statistics on that?
We do not, unfortunately.
That would be a good thing to look at. Another thing would be if you needed more manpower, woman power at the sites and everything, considering some of the judges of elections or something, offering them an opportunity to participate might help increase your ability to populate those.
Yeah, and sorry, this might be for Chet or Dave, but you do know how many provisionals were turned in total, which was a couple thousand, less than that? No, but it's like a fraction of how many people didn't, even if they were all surrendered, it would not be that many people compared to the folks who didn't return a ballot.
If somebody surrenders their ballot and their envelopes, they are permitted to vote at the polls. They do not have to vote provisionally.
Yeah, and we haven't exactly counted, but it's pretty low. It's under 1,000 countywide. Somebody who surrendered it and then voted on the machine. It's not that high.
Couple questions. I have a couple questions. My first one, and maybe you answered this, I was a few minutes late. Do you have a publicly available budget that is viewable? Like if I were to look at a budget that the Elections Division has and how the money is allocated, is that something that is it on the Allegheny County website, or is it something that I just email you and ask for?
There's high-level budget information on Allegheny County's website under the Office of Budget and Finance. Elections is under the Department of Administrative Services, so I forget where we fall in all of the line items, but if you look for Administrative Services, Elections is kind of halfway through within our cost center, and it'll break it out to what's called object codes. So it'll talk about, printing and document storage and things like that.
Okay, my second question is of the total number of voters that are registered in Allegheny County, what is the percentage, and I think you might do this anyway on your Allegheny Votes email that you send out, request mail-in ballots. What is the percentage that actually request mail-in ballots out of the total number of registered voters?
Well, I mean, it varies between elections. Right now, we currently have about 916,000 registered voters. And as of this afternoon, the applications processed for mail-in or absentee ballots, we just crested 152,000.
Okay, so maybe we approach 20%, is that what you're saying? If I were to do fancy math right there? Okay, and do we get, this is my final question, what percentage of voters, like I remember years ago, like 30% showed up for elections. Of the registered voters, it was like 30 to 33%, depending on weather. What is the percentage in Allegheny County that are actively voting, whether it be in person or be a mail-in ballot, an absentee?
I would suspect for this November election that we could hit 75%.
Okay. What was it has it ever hit that high before?
Yes, we hit that high in 2020.
Okay. Thank you for letting me ask my questions.
Questions over here?
I just want to know if the PowerPoint is available to the public. Can we get a copy of the PowerPoint?
Yeah. I'll send it out to the Board of Elections members after this, and then we can make it available to the public.
Is there any chance, likelihood, whatever, that the legislature in their infinite wisdom will allow you to start to count ballots early so that you would have an actual tally at the end of the day?
I hope they're listening to you right now. I haven't heard anything. I don't know if David has. Yeah.
I suspect they're not going to make any changes at this point, close to the general election.
Questions back here?
I was wondering, is there equal representation of all parties at these sites and poll workers in Allegheny County? Are there equal representation of all parties? I mean, is it mostly Democrat, mostly Republican, independents? What is it?
So as far as the staffing goes that we provide, I don't know how anyone is registered. I don't look up the registration of the staff that we have within elections. They're assigned. Both parties are welcome to have representatives there. I know when we did it in April, there were a few sites that had representatives from the Republican Party and the Democratic Party that sat up outside to observe the process.
Mm-hmm. And then I was wondering, how are you going to handle documenting proof of citizenship in the elections?
Well, I think for the purposes of tonight, we're just going to talk about off-site voting. That's something.
Well, that will happen at off-site voting. You'll need to know whether someone has proof of citizenship or not.
If the person is registered to vote, they will be entitled to vote.
If they're registered to vote.
That is correct.
So if they got proof of, if they got an ID, say at the DMV, if they showed that, are they going to be able to vote, or do they need to have proof of citizenship?
Well, to utilize ballot return sites, you have to be registered to vote already, and you're going to the return site to apply for a mail-in ballot. So your registration will have already taken place.
Okay.
Questions down here?
Mr. Boy said there were 916,000 registered voters. And I believe wasn't on the thing, but I think you said 2,800 people used these sites?
Approximately.
That seems like a very small number. I don't know why we're focusing on that. And my other question is, why would by their name, it's a mail-in ballot? Why are people not mailing them in? I mean, the idea was to make this easy, so we're mailing out ballots and then people are having to drive to a site. Well, they could drive to vote in person, and we have more of those sites. So, I mean, bottom line, it's this particular subject seems much ado about nothing. We're talking about 2,800 people.
Ma'am, on that subject, the mail system isn't flawless, and I'll let Mr. Harhut address pieces of mailed ballots he got this week, Chet, from the April primary. That's the problem.
We certainly still have a problem with late ballots coming in, and so we would encourage people, if they're running up against the deadline or election day, to use a site like this. We received 1,336 late ballots from last election, including 25 last week.
They were postmarked timely.
Yes, and so it does happen, and so things like this allow people other options than putting it in the mail.
It's still an infinitesimal. I mean, if you're concerned about the budget, it seems like a very small number of voters.
We want to
do publicity and encourage people. I mean, I guess I think the election system has more problems than this.
I think we've all accepted, though, that this wasn't a competitive primary. So it was an exceptionally low voter turnout, particularly for a presidential election. I don't think we're going to see that in the fall. I think it's going to be the other end of the spectrum. It's going to be an extremely high voter turnout, and you're going to see an increased number of people utilizing these locations.
But I still think it's a mail-in ballot.
I just wanted
I don't understand why we're asking people to drive somewhere and deposit a mail-in ballot. The idea was you use the mail. If there's a problem with the mail, then that needs to be addressed.
Thank you for that. I also wanted to just point out the comment around the budget. Historically, the only way to really access how county dollars are being spent is through the comprehensive fiscal plan, which is a very large PDF document that's available to the public. But it's very dense. It's hard to dive into the details per department and division. Because we're going through our budgeting cycle right now, and we have to pass at the end of the year, the executive's office will be launching a new budget tool that'll allow you to, that'll be more graphic, more user-friendly, allow you to kind of interact with county dollars in a more unique way. It won't be everything that we want it to be all at once, but it's a new tool, and then we're going to build on it in future years. So just to kind of highlight how to find out that information.
Other questions?
I have one. Oh, okay. When I saw that this meeting was going to occur in the Allegheny votes, it said that we would be discussing ways to host secure, safe, and accessible elections. It didn't say that it was limited to the ballot drop-off boxes. So I had a different question that was not about the ballot drop-off. I'm wondering if I'm allowed to ask it. Because that's how it was advertised. I can? Okay. Mr. Boy, I have a question. Down at the warehouse, I understand those people are considered poll workers as well, the people that are conning the mail-in ballots. Would we be able to apply for a poll working position at the warehouse if we're not a county employee?
All the folks working at the warehouse on election night are county employees. They're not considered poll workers.
Okay, well, Are we allowed to have, like, somebody, but you can't observe, you can't really see. I'm not trying to cause a problem, I'm just saying, you can't see.
I think there's some questions in the back.
Oh, wait, no, I have another question to go with that. Sorry. Okay, if they're county employees, I thought that it was illegal to have a government employee count ballots.
It is not.
Okay.
Okay, so
Look
I have a
into that.
Thanks. Hello, another Board of Elections member has joined us. Thank you. Councilmember DeMarco.
Thanks so much. Thank you for your time today. I have a question about the location of where these are replaced, if you were to place any new ones or change locations up. It's undeniable that first-time voters are a large chunk of the voters that would benefit most from these election satellite offices. As I'm sure you're all aware, Pittsburgh hosts tens of thousands of students, and many of them are either first-time voters or recently updated their voter registration because no one moves more than students do per year. If I'm not mistaken, there are 3 precincts running through Oakland alone, which has caused numerous cases of students that need to go to an elections office to return their mail-in ballot or dispute another election-related problem. But they weren't able to because they couldn't track all the way to downtown in the height of midterm season or other responsibilities that they face as young people. Can we count on you to place a satellite office in central Oakland to support these tens of thousands of first-time or recently moved voters?
Thanks. I don't want to answer on behalf of the team, but I'm sure they will take that into advisement.
Yes, thank you. We're not going to make any concrete decisions right now, but we are going to, as I said at the beginning, gather information from this, gather information from the surveys, and then make a recommendation to the administration and the Board of Elections.
Can I ask a follow-up to that really quick? Have you considered that previously when you placed locations of these for 2024's primaries?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the tail end of your question.
Did you consider that already in your decision for where you placed the 2024 primary locations?
In placing near Oakland?
Or anywhere closer to students?
Squirrel Hill's pretty close.
Yeah, Squirrel Hill was kind of our acquiescing to that.
I'd like to ask about access of locations to seniors in the community. And you talk about public access to public transportation, but seniors are a special group. Accessing public transportation is hard, just transferring from one bus to another when there are physical limitations. I think that we really need to consider ways that we are addressing the access for senior communities. Also, seniors who have moved from a home residence into a different facility may need to change their location for voting. And this is a big process for seniors who may have hearing losses or have slower cognitive processing times that need more time in order to understand what needs to be done. They need more assistance. I'm also wondering if there are opportunities for over-the-counter voting where those people may change their location of voter registration and vote on the same day, which also could be beneficial to the students in Oakland. So I guess I'm just advocating for consideration of what the senior population, not just older people who are fine getting on a bus, but people who have physical disabilities, people who have hearing problems, people who need more time in figuring out how to maneuver that system are being taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. I think we had a question here.
Okay.
Okay, my question is surrounding the ballot return process for people who are currently incarcerated or for people who apply for a mail-in ballot while they are in the jail but then get released. How would they handle that change of address? How would they handle the return if they are in the jail? What ballot secrecy measures are being taken so COs aren't looking at their ballots or trying to figure out who they voted for? Those sort of things. I have heard from people in the jail that they don't feel comfortable voting in jail because they're not sure that their mail will be searched. I've heard people say that, they applied for a ballot while they were in jail and now they don't know where it's going once they are released. Are they able to go to their old polling place and vote provisionally? Just making sure we're taking care of that population, because that population tends to cycle quite quickly.
Sure. I mean, I think we have a fairly robust program in place at the county jail now. We've upgraded it in the past elections where we have members of League of Women Voters that go pod by pod and help them register to vote and help these people if they want to apply for a mail-in ballot. We process those forms. If they do want a mail-in ballot, representatives from our office will go down and assist them in voting if needed. Those ballots are taken back in our custody and put into the warehouse and put in with the rest of all the other ballots. I mean, it's a safe and secure system.
Let's get them. Sorry, Tanisha, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just the second part of that question for people who do, register for that mail-in ballot or register as being incarcerated and then are released. Do they vote provisionally at their old polling place, or what do they do then?
If they did not cast a mail-in ballot, they can go to their polling place and cast a provisional ballot. But if they already voted and their mail-in ballot is in our possessions, the provisional ballot will not be counted.
Hi there, thank you for taking my question. Regarding all of the different mail-in/ballot, absentee ballot, drop boxes that you have on the map here, have you guys discussed security of these drop box locations, such as 24-hour video cameras, making sure that those are secure, they're watching them, in case any discrepancies come up afterwards, to make sure that everybody's voice is being heard and that their ballot is secure? Thank you.
Yeah, let me give you a quick response. We don't use drop boxes. We have ballot return sites that are constantly manned. Well, very big difference. That they're manned, the one's ballot is given to a staffer who asks them if it's their ballot, and if it's their signature, they only take one ballot per person, and the staffer puts it in the box. That's still under camera, but it's not unmanned. Some counties have that. We don't. We never have, and hopefully won't.
I'm starting to see some repeat questioners. Is there anyone who didn't get their first question yet? And then we can do another round.
Did you want to go first? Yes, question. So I did some analysis on the ballots in the county that was provided for the images in the CVRs. It's been announced in court. They talked about it, and also after looking at it, we did have duplicates in one of our elections with the ballots, and I can share those with anybody that needs to see those if needed, if they're a voter of Allegheny County. But in my analysis, I noticed that the error rate seemed a whole lot higher in the mail-in ballots for when, say, there's an overvote, like somebody would write the candidate in and they would also select the candidate. So that wasn't getting counted because it was considered an overvote. And that wouldn't get counted probably unless we actually did a recount. That's actually one of my questions. If you guys did any analysis on voters and seeing, how many overvotes and undervotes there are, just to see, do you need to update the instructions? Because from what I saw, we probably need to update the instructions on the ballot. I have a couple more questions after that.
You want to take that one first?
So if you vote a ballot at your polling location and it's a vote for one office and you darken two ovals, the machine will give you a warning saying, look, on this office you voted for two candidates. It gives you the opportunity to turn your ballot into the election officer where it would be just set aside and vote a new ballot. If you vote by mail, we don't have that luxury. That ballot is scanned how you sent it in. If you darken two ovals and vote for one office, that office, the votes are not counted. All other contests, the ballots are counted.
My next question is in one of the elections we had identifiable barcodes on the outer envelope and on the ballots, which could actually, from my understanding from a court case that was also omitted, it could actually help identify the voter on the ballot. So the county would be able to look up, even though we have separated them all through the central count, which I've attended a few times, it kind of defeats that purpose. Have we corrected that issue?
Well, first of all, the county couldn't go back and see how you voted for. It was a barcoding issue with our vendor. We are no longer using that vendor, and your name is no longer associated with a barcode. But we never had the ability to go back and look to see who anybody voted for, or did we ever?
So, so in that, you guys keep the green envelope, and which you guys have that, and there's also the ballots, which I have those, which actually have the barcode on those, so those do match. So I can prove that too if you guys need to see that, which I've actually given you guys, which I've been ignored on that, and then there was no analysis on that. My next question was, in my analysis that I provided to you guys, I found that the duplicates actually changed the outcomes in some of the precinct levels, where some of the voters actually tied and some then also flipped. I provided that analysis to you guys as well once I took out the duplicates. I never got a response on that either, and I was just curious where you guys are on that investigation.
Man, I think it's beyond the scope of why we're here tonight.
If we look at the thing, it talks about election security.
I understand what the ad says, but in fact, we're here to talk about the neighborhood, or however we phrase it, voting process.
That's not what was indicated on the site, and that's why I'm here. The last question I have is USB drives. I've asked several times that the USB drives be returned on election night. I know there's issues with that. I know that Jessica admitted to in one of the past board meetings that some people probably actually took them home with them, which I do have, but again, that's on video that I was watching on the board meeting. I do still have concerns around USB drives and the usage. I brought that up several times, and unfortunately, I'm bringing it to this meeting because I haven't got answers, and I've sent several emails to you guys on certain things, and I brought it up in the board has not responded to me, unfortunately. So I hate to bring that up in this case. I like you guys, but at the same time, I think these things need addressed.
No response. Oh, okay. Hi. First of all, Sarah just stepped out, but I would like to thank Sarah for having a forum such as this because, like Matt, we've been attending Board of Elections meetings for probably 4 years, and we're virtually ignored. And Sarah and Bethany, I got to give you a handout too because they ask us questions and at least pretend like our concerns matter. So accolades to Sarah because I think this is really important. It's not a secret that the majority of people across the country have concerns about how our elections are conducted. So I'm a judge of election, and at poll worker training, they actually teach us that no government employees should be doing the counting of the ballots. And I would like to challenge the fact that nothing is counted by civilians in the entire process in Allegheny County. That as a judge, I don't count anything, I don't reconcile anything, I don't see anything, and then it all comes together somewhere and there is no oversight. So I would like to hear that that is not the case because it appears that everything is run by county employees. Lastly, you said it didn't matter if there was Democrat or Republican representation. However, according to the definition of a BOE, in my precinct, we should have a minority and a majority inspector, I believe, representing one from each party. That may have changed. I can't keep up with the legislation, but I would just like to see if you guys can respond to any of that. And then the ultimate dream would be verification to get all these mail-ins back to the precincts and allow the precinct boards to verify what the heck is going on because of the lack of transparency.
Okay, anything you want to take from that list?
Yeah, let me briefly address that.
Okay.
The warehouse function is not a polling place. So the warehouse function, I'm sorry, the warehouse function is not a polling place. So there's no minority inspector, no judge of elections. That's at the local polling place. As Jessica said, nobody keeps track of party affiliation for anybody in the warehouse.
But you're counting 40% of the ballots in the warehouse.
But but it's not, we're talking about the election code interpretation of the law. It's not a polling place. And different rule, for instance, here's a for instance.
I'm wondering why people are concerned. This isn't me complaining, this is why I'm concerned. There are questions.
Okay. Well, there are systems that we've addressed and I think questions that we answer. And That's the best answer I can give you. And the warehouse operation is publicly accessible by you're shaking your head no, but let me define publicly accessible. Authorized representatives of parties and candidates can appear, and okay, guys don't agree with my explanation, but it's my explanation. It's our collective explanation. Okay. So there's, like in the same way that poll workers were local polling places, authorized representatives are at the warehouse.
Yeah, as a representative, it's very hard to see when you're 100 feet away. And I know you guys have told me you guys are basically doing the minimum that you have to do. And when you have to see these screens, stuff, and you guys, it's hard to see those screens and people pulling out or talking big on the screen. Just with the observations that I've done, I see people not follow instructions that you guys have given them. And I know they're not reading written policies, have written policies or anything. But you guys did put on the table for the representative. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for that. That was great. And I think those are important, having the written processes and procedures. So me as a representative know exactly what's going on. Because I've had to tell a lot of people what is going on in the counting and the process, and I shouldn't have to do that. You guys should be doing that, so people should be able to see that. And when you have a bullpen that's over here with monitors, it's clear over here, way down the hall, I can't see what's going on over there. And I brought that to your guys' attention. It's just, you guys don't have to do that. I get it, you don't have to do it by law. What I'm saying is put a bullpen on the other corner, but we just make a path, people walk down to the other bullpen and just see what's going on. That way, I don't have to complain about it anymore board meetings. I think I brought it up 2 or 3 times. That's all.
Can I ask one quick question before we wrap up here? I wanted to ask a follow-up to what you just asked about I've seen the poll worker training before, and I don't remember ever seeing something in it about county employees can't do, or government employees can't do X, Y, and Z, but it seems that a couple people brought that up today, so I'm just wondering if the folks who created the training and facilitate the training could just respond to that portion of the question about what government employees are allowed to do in the elections process and what they're not allowed to do, and what it says in the training.
Poll workers at polling locations. To be elected, you cannot be a city, state, or federal county employee. To be elected, but we have the permission to be able to appoint county employees where we have vacancies, through the courts, obviously.
Okay, so we are trying to wrap up in the next few minutes. Was there anyone who didn't ask a question yet who would like to ask one? And then we'll come back to folks who are getting their second bite at the apple. Yes, but he did ask a question already. So you get one, and then we'll go to him, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay. I'd like to jump off of a question that was asked earlier concerning student accessibility for satellite offices. I know you guys said that you took Squirrel Hill into account in previous elections, but I would like to push back on that by saying that it still is mostly a residential area. Oakland houses students from Pitt, Carlo, and Carnegie Mellon. Is one of the most densely populated areas in the city. So again, I would just like to reiterate that it would be really, as representatives of the student body in that area, it would be very beneficial to have satellite offices there. And just one more question for clarification. When it comes to advertising, how are you guys planning on distributing advertising across different bus stops and buses throughout the city? Are you taking population density and socioeconomic, like income level, into consideration in terms of accessibility for these ads? Are they just going to be planted on buses that go across the city, or are they going to be on billboards and bus stops? This is a genuine question.
So we do countywide with the buses and the bus stops. Obviously, there's more concentration with that downtown. There's more bus stops downtown in the city proper than there are necessarily, in the North Hills, South Hills, East and West Hills. As far as billboards go, we typically stick to, parkways, east and west, north and south, along Route 51, Route 28, 279, I can't think off the top of my head if we utilize anything off of Route 65, but we look to get things not just within the city, but also throughout the entirety of the county, because that's who we're serving.
As a longtime judge of elections, I should point out that the dealing of the mail-in ballots used to be the responsibility of each polling place. And prior to COVID, it wasn't necessarily too bad. Maybe we would have a dozen or so that we'd have to tabulate. And even then, it was a harrowing experience with some of my poll workers. Certainly with the count going up to hundreds of coming in and being with our polling places, this is a huge difference. And I think it was more prone to mistakes and problems prior, so we have made advances if there are any changes. There was mentioned about the high rises and the people who were there that weren't registered and stuff. And so one of the suggestions I would make, if it would be possible for the county to provide a list to the public housing managements and any of the senior housing facilities of the people who are registered at their address, so that they can run that past their list of residents to see who isn't correctly registered. And I know this from petitioning this past winter, that a large percentage of the people living in these senior centers are not correctly registered at that address. And then on election day, it's also going to create problems for them if they decide to go that way, and as far as mail-in ballots, et cetera. But this would be a good way to help clean up and help make sure we get people can vote to vote.
Thank you for that. One more question on this side.
I noticed from the map, it appears that, if my eyesight serves me well, you had, for the primary, you had 5 or 6 locations for the offsite?
We had 7.
You had 7, okay. Is the plan, is your budget going to allow you to expand that number for November? And if so, can you tell us what the status of selecting the locations is?
Right now, depending on dates and times that we select, we're comfortable adding possibly an additional 2 to 3 locations on top of the 7 that we already had. Mind you, one of those 7 is the county office building. That will be there forever. But of the other 6 locations we had, as I said, we could add anywhere from, 1, 2, 3, depending on what information we gathered tonight from the survey and the data that we have up there.
Is there one more question on this side? All right, this will be our last question. Yeah. Oh, sorry, missed. Okay, second to last question.
My question pertains to what the lady just asked. When you consider the satellite sites, will it be based on demographics, like population, or geographics?
We've done the geographical approach already, so I think now we need to do a deeper dive and look at, population density and where we're not getting returns from.
Okay, last question.
Hi, I'm sorry, I did get here late, but I have one question about the warehouse and the counting of that. Can you explain how that actually is and who decides who counts the mail-in ballots? Because I'm ignorant to that, and I'm wondering how close do the watchers in the warehouse get to observe the counting?
Go ahead. The first part of that question, you were asking how we come up with the staff to do that?
Yeah. Are they volunteers?
No, everyone's a full-time county employee. And so depending on it's signed by the county manager's office. So we actually have every agency in the county probably represented there, everything from the medical examiner to the public works and everything. And so we reassign people to help with that big effort. And as far as, we could look but we've tried to do our best to allow observers to see what they can. But one thing we're always fearful is we can't have people communicating to our workers, and we can't have them interfering, and so we try to draw that line of as much accessibility as possible.
That's a good question, or a thought though, because if you're a poll watcher, then you are, I thought that's part of the process.
Poll watchers? They're not considered poll watchers. It's not a polling place. They're representatives of either a campaign or a political party that are there to observe.
Observe the count, like.
So nobody's physically counting. You're putting a ballot through a scanner, and the scanner does the tabulating. But I will notice that we use 2 rooms in our warehouse, and within those 2 rooms, we have installed 10 80-inch video monitors where if something's occurring in part of a warehouse that you are physically not able to see, you can look at this stuff and follow us on those monitors. We're trying to be as open as we can.
But as I said, it's hard to see though. But to your question, I know I've been a representative quite a few times. Okay, guys, 25 hours we got here. It is harder to see what's going on, and Chet was correct that you're not 55 to workers. Workers can talk amongst themselves and do whatever. But as a representative, you're not supposed to talk to workers. You have to talk to Al or Dave or Chet or somebody that's in charge.
Yeah, and we do have staff like our legal department and management that is happy to answer any question. You could come to one of us as an observer and say, can you explain what's going on there? And we would be happy to do that.
I have one other question too. Since obviously this election coming up is critical for everyone, how long do you project it to take to count those mail-in ballots? I mean, are we going to have an answer that night?
Well, that's always the goal. It depends on how many mail-in ballots we get. So we're very good at what we do, and historically we've been done shortly after the polls close, but that didn't happen in 2020. We had I forget how many 100,000 ballots. Since then, we've had usually 150,000 or less, and we've been able to get done by about 8:15 with the mail-in portion. Now, the precinct level, that's a different story because those judge of elections turn those ballots in, but it's obviously our goal to have them done sooner than later.
So to your point, sometimes you get feedback, don't get returned right away either, we've noticed. I've asked a few times in the election warehouse, it's not coming in. So you don't usually, sometimes you'll see on the screen online on the account, you'll see where a precinct's not converting. Usually it's because something is there.
But I think at this point, we've gotten all the questions. As we said earlier, we will make this information available online after we share it with the Board of Elections members. If you think of any questions after the fact, feel free to email boe@alleghenycounty.us. As a reminder, we're also going to have a Board of Elections meeting in this room on September 9th at 3 p.m. that everyone's welcome to attend. We will sign up for public comment then, or if you want to submit written comment, you can send that to the board as well. So again, thank you everyone for attending. I hope you gained a little bit of insight. I know we did, and we're going to present this information that we've gathered at that Board of Elections meeting, so stay tuned.